Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, where we talk to amazing people doing incredible things that lead the charge of generosity. My name is Warren Barry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Now, today, our guest is Erin Pheil. Taking out the boulders in the stream that are getting in the way of being your best self is Erin's passion. Being bullied as a little girl to going through unexplained pain and depression is what guided her to having her breakthrough moment. And this is what drove Erin to help so many others get through their mental blocks and to also better the pond. Thank you, Erin, for your compassion and empathy and for every ripple that you create. Ladies and gentlemen, Erin Pheil. So, Erin Pheil, you know what? I am so excited to have you as a guest on my Better the Pond podcast. Thank you ever so much for taking the time out to be here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am super excited. So, we're going to jump right into this. So, Erin, I want to know what got you from being a gosling to leaving the nest, right, to where you are today. What is your backstory, Erin?
It is one that I couldn't have. I'm a planner, right? Like I'm a 8 follow through. I kind of like structure and sequence, and it's something that I never in a million years could have planned. So I finished grad school and went out to go find a job to work at a web agency because surely someone would want to hire somebody with a master's degree. No, nobody wanted to hire me.
I'm gonna catch you. I'm gonna catch you out. Let's take you back. We want to take you back to when you were a gosling. I want
earlier?
you back at the beginning. What has made you the person that you are today? Right?
Okay.
You are in Colorado, or in Frisco, Colorado. Were you always a Coloradian?
Frisco. No, I actually started in San Francisco. I was born in California. I was born in San Francisco. Grew up in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah, so I grew up out there and played a lot of soccer, did a lot of snowboarding when I was a kid. Kind of grew up in a standard family with a younger brother, and ended up kind of being really good at school.
You were good at school, like all the way through, like elementary and middle school and the whole.
I started off really precocious. I got it by the time I got to kindergarten. They're like, "Will you get the hell out of here? We don't want you here. Like, go to the next grade. You're answering everybody's questions. You're being the brat who has their hand up permanently. You're just like, you just shouldn't be here." And they bumped me up. I was already young, and they bumped me up into first grade. Which interestingly had massive ripple impacts on the rest of my life. When you are surrounded constantly as a little kid by other children who are 2-3 years older than you, it's not a lot when you're an adult. It doesn't matter if somebody's 20 years older than you, but when you're a kid, and that's your environment, that has a massive impact on your social development and self-esteem and what you think makes you a good person. So I finished by the time I finished, I was 16 when I went off to college. And then I ended up finishing undergraduate early as well, because I got through college early. So I was done, and I couldn't, I wasn't even of legal drinking age. And all I knew was school. So I was like, I guess I'm going to go do more school. And my parents said, let's wait a second. Like, maybe go out and see the world.
So you were that incredibly smart way back then, and you just carried that all the way through today.
I don't know if I'm that smart. I think I might have. I'm not sure. It's up for debate. Okay. I think I just got a head start. I was just early. I just was ahead of everybody.
So, you said something really interesting though, right? Is, because you were with kids that were older than you, right? And you had to kind of keep up, and it had, and you said it played a big role in your development and your self-esteem went on. Can you elaborate on that how did that work out for you?
Yeah, that's absolutely. So, all I understood back then was my identity and my self-worth was always tied to, like, I learned at a young age that, I guess I am better than everybody else, and I have to be better than everyone else. And I get the praise and attention from adults and everyone when I do better than everyone else. So it wasn't just I had to do well. It wasn't just I had to do good enough. It wasn't that I just had to get A's. It had to be literally better than everyone else, because when I was in preschool, when I was in kindergarten, I was in first grade, that was all I knew, and that was how I was told you did a good job and received praise and attention. Meanwhile, simultaneously, I quickly learned that I was not very popular and not very well liked. The maturity level of a 6-year-old is very different than the maturity level of an eight-year-old or a 9-year-old.
For sure.
And so I struggled socially and kind of developed, these beliefs that maybe I'm not that likable, or maybe I'm an outsider. And meanwhile, also these rules or beliefs about myself that what makes me valuable and worthwhile is being better than everybody else. That's the only time I'm good enough or I'm okay, is that I'm excelling and doing exceptionally well, which created a pretty serious hamster wheel for me to live on.
Oh, absolutely. And do you find, going back to when you were, obviously younger and 6 years old and going through, did that carry all the way through into your high school years as well? Or you just sort of carried all the way through? You had to push yourself that hard or to excel in order to be accepted?
That carried into my adult life. That's why I'm doing the work I'm doing today, is once those things are set, as a young child, they don't leave you easily. They run in the background as these subconscious programs. I mean, even as recent as, 5 years ago, before I was doing what I do now with the MindFix group, I couldn't go on a pleasant bike ride or go out snowboarding with my friends, because there was this constant, I'm not the fastest person. That person's faster. I'm failing. And it was always running in the background. I would come home from social activities, outdoor activities, sports, or even just going out with people, and I would come back feeling defeated as someone in their 30s, sometimes crying because I'd be like, I wasn't good enough. How embarrassing. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the best. They must have thought I was horrible. And that plagued me even well into my 30s. It never left. I never was able to shake it.
Right. Wow. So going back to that, as far as you said, you grew up in a sort of normal, we'll call it normal household, right? But were your parents teachers or academics or anything like that, or this is just how you came
They
into the
didn't
world?
care about grades. I used to bring home grades in high school and be like, I got straight A's. I had perfection. And they'd be like, yep, you did. That's you. But there was never any. I remember I got my first C in high school, and talk about, look up the definition of devastation, in the dictionary. That was me when I got my 1 C ever. And I thought world was over, world was ending. I was worthless. I got a C. I think it was in trigonometry. And I came home and they were just like, why are you worried? My mom's like, I flunked Spanish 3 times. My dad's like, I barely made it through high school. Why are you so obsessed and worried with grades? So no, they did not pressure me to excel academically.
So the only person that actually really took this so seriously in your own mind was yourself. You were it, right? There was no other outside pressures. Fascinating. So there you are. So I mean, living in the Bay Area in California, though, it had to be kind of cool as a kid. Was it pretty amazing, the beaches and the warm weather and the whole 9 yards?
It was beautiful. There was city, there was nature. You could head out to the national parks. You could be on the ocean really quickly. You had a big city there, and then it was a wonderful environment socially too, to grow up in. It was incredibly just welcoming and accepting. People, people of all races and ethnicities and sexualities, it just didn't matter. Mm-hmm. In that area, I think I grew up taking it for granted that everybody's accepted and it doesn't matter kind of what you look like or who you are. And that's not the case still to this day in other parts of the country or the world. And I feel very fortunate to have grown up in such a wonderful place.
Yeah, that would have been pretty incredible. A guy from the prairies, right? It's just We just crave that kind of world. So you went to college when you were 16 years old. That must have been quite an event for you. I mean, again, at the no, I
Yeah,
mean,
it
that's
was totally normalized. By the time I was 16, I was like, I'm ready. Let's go. I didn't feel younger. It was just normal.
hmm. And what did you take in when you went to college?
Psychology.
It's like I knew that was coming already, but
Shocker.
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 And so, can you tell me what took you into that realm? Like, what was it about psychology that attracted you? That you said, "This is what I want to do."
I've just always had a fascination for why people are different, why they are the way they are, why they do what they do. I mean, that's how we met, right?
Yeah,
Because I was
absolutely.
fascinated by like how do I know why people might do something? I've always been fascinated by that. It was the books I would read when I was younger. They had a psychology 101 class in high school, and I was like first person to sign up for that, and it was just a long term fascinating. Plus, I sucked at math. So, that cut off a lot of choices.
That's true. So, looking back now, and going back to your child, do you remember like how old you would have been, or do you remember a time where that part of psychology really fascinated you, that you started on that path? How old would you have been?
It probably was my teens when I did start taking psychology in high school. I remember asking, why do people do that, and why is she different, and asking questions when I was younger.
Hmm.
And I struggled with depression starting at a young age. My parents put me in therapy starting in like fourth grade because I was struggling so much at school. I was coming home crying. I was in therapy because I couldn't, get through a day at school because I'd be bullied, or I'd try to be friends and do something, and it's like, no, that's not what you do to make a friend. I was just not socially on the same level as the kids around me, and the problems and repercussions of that started early. So I was in therapy on and off starting at like age 8, and so I'd sit in therapist's office and I'd get these questions of why, and I'd have these conversations, and I remember being equally just as fascinated by what was going on and analyzing how they were analyzing me. And I didn't realize at the time, but I would look forward to just going in and answering all these questions. It was fun for me.
And so, so really, it was to your own advantage on so many accounts.
Yeah.
So, going back to when you're younger, you're 16 around that time, and you're going to college. Did you work through that time as well, or did you just put your head down and go to school?
No, I was extremely fortunate. My parents covered my undergraduate degree costs. I ended up playing competitive college soccer at the time, so I focused on my studies and then on college athletics. And I was fortunate I didn't have to work in undergrad.
So, when did you actually start working and getting in, being employed, and getting into that world?
That was actually where I accidentally started our entire podcast at the beginning, where I jumped in halfway. Is I went off to grad. I took a couple of years off after getting my psychology degree, and that was around the .com boom time. And I ended up veering out of psychology and into the world of websites and website design, which to me combines psychology and art and strategy and business. And so I got a degree in digital media and ended up trying to go get a job. Couldn't, went, I wanted to, I moved to the mountains first. Let's be honest. I moved to the mountains and then I looked for a job because I had to be able to snowboard because that was the most important thing first and foremost. So I moved to the mountains again, and then went to the 3 web design companies that existed at the time
Mhm.
within like a 50-mile radius. And they're all like, we don't need anybody. We're like a 2-person shop. Like, we're sorry, we don't need you. And I said, well, what am I going to do here? I guess I'm going to have to start my own thing. And that's how I got into the world of entrepreneurship. It hadn't occurred to me that I would do that, but out of necessity, I ended up doing that. And then I started a web design and development agency straight out of graduate school. And that's what I did for 16 years. Um,
That's
Went down that path.
Yeah, and that's interesting how you went like from psychology of being this passion, right, into web design. And I understand there's the whole marketing piece with that and the psychology behind it. But here you are, you got your psych degree, so you didn't follow that traditional path,
No.
right? And you went into web design. So was there a fascination with technology that
Technology and design. I just was such a sucker for beautiful design and art, and loved it. And the idea of combining those things again with strategy and business appealed to me much more than the idea of, I didn't really know what to do with psychology. I was like, I don't think I want to be a counselor sitting in a chair all day.
Mhm.
I definitely need more variety in my life than that.
So, and you did this for what, 16 years, you said? So,
Yeah, 16, 17 years. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, and not only just having a regular business, an award-winning business. So, what award did you win for the wonderful work that you did?
We won a lot of design awards for the actual designs and layouts that we created. And then we also were nationally ranked as a WordPress design agency and a WordPress development agency against a lot of agencies and companies that were like 6, 7, 8 times our size. So there's independent research companies, a small handful of them out there that go and conduct a tremendous amount of research on all the agencies, and then they go and they will create matrices of like, these are the up and comers, these are the fast risers, these are the most dependable. And we were consistently ranked in the upper right quadrant alongside really well-known, established, kind of like New York agencies as one of the most dependable, reliable, successful WordPress agencies in the US.
That's an amazing accomplishment. When you think,
Yeah.
yeah, really, when you're going up against some of the real big players, there you were.
Mhm.
And so what was in behind that drove that? Was it again, was it sort of that sort of competitive nature? You got to be the best. Did that all sort of follow through into what got the business to that level?
Interesting. I would say um, a lot of my follow through, like my aim follow through, which is atypical for entrepreneurs, I would
Mhm.
say, um, impacted our intense focus on like quality and completion and doing exactly what was said. And it's an interesting world, the agency world, where a lot of phone calls I would field would be people saying, these people promised X and then they never delivered. They
Yeah.
promised, they don't show up for meetings, they don't complete deliverables on time, they skip steps, and there's a lot of sloppiness. So interestingly enough, just really having a clear plan and doing what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it goes a long way in that
Hmm.
world. There's a lot of unreliable and trustworthy businesses, and people get burned a lot,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and lose a lot of money. And so just by being consistent and reliable and doing what we said we would do and kind of relentlessly and ruthlessly sticking to what we promised, that right there went a whole long way in allowing us to develop trust with our clients and growing. Now, again, without me being a super high quick start, we did not grow like we didn't jump in and just like skyrocket. It was a very slow, much slower, methodical growth because we didn't have an initiating quick start on our team. So we had me at a 6, but it was interesting because it was a slow every year. Every year was better than the last year,
Yeah.
but it was like it would probably drive some people crazy. But for me, it was fine.
Yeah, it was slow. It was steady, consistent growth,
Yes.
right? Which is,
Yeah.
well, that's you.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, obviously, being in that world, you love design, you love color, you put all those things together, and you're obviously very successful at it. Presently, do you still love design and color and putting things together? Do you still do that? Just, you're not doing it on web design anymore, but is that still a passion of yours?
Such a good question. It's not as strong as it used to be. It used to be like I would have books on it and I would study it, and in my free time I would draw and paint. Um, and I decorated my house and everything. Like the visual, the way things looked was so important to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it is not a priority. It has dropped off. I still appreciate it. I still see it. I still incorporate some of that into like my home, and yet it's I don't know where it went. It's not the driving passion that I used to have. It's like I burned through whatever store I had in me or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe you just use that energy up, right? But I bet you still have blue hair, right? And last time I talked to you, you had pink hair. So you're still into color, right?
A little bit, a little bit. True.
So going from having the web, design company and all that work for 16 years, and where did you go from there? So bring me up to speed. So now we're kind of getting into you've left the nest, right? And bring us up to today. What's up?
Sure. So around like year 15 or so of running the agency, I realized I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. And I just wasn't happy. Like the industry was becoming commoditized. Things that you could charge $40,000 for a few years ago, were suddenly showing up for $50 a month membership, like or $50 a month, website type do-it-yourself stuff.
Right.
And there's a plethora of cheap labor and kids coming out of college who could do work that previously only highly trained technicians could do. And the commoditization, and also just to do the work, to do a great website, whereas in 2002 you make something that looks nice, you build it nice, you put it up. Now with the competition, because nobody had websites back then, and now it was like it's got to be optimized properly. All the social media accounts need to be there. There needs to be the proper messaging, and there needs to be search engine optimization strategy. It also needs to display seamlessly and flawlessly across all mobile devices, as well as desktop and laptop and different resolutions. So it has to be completely responsive. The content management system that runs it needs to be continually maintained and updated and upgraded, and all the plugins need to work really well together. And then if you integrate e-commerce, like the amount of work that goes into a website these days has skyrocketed, and then the pricing and what you can charge because of the amount of people doing the work has plummeted. So complexity has gone up and pricing has gone down, competition has gone up. And I just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just not passionate about it. But I didn't know what else I could do. I was like, I don't have any other training. I've never done anything else. I've never had any other jobs. All I've known is this. What the hell am I going to do? So that's when I actually met you. Interestingly enough, around this time, I also developed some serious chronic pain. It was mystery pain. Nobody knew what was going on or how to help it, or I just went into test after test after test and ended up going from PTs and massage therapists and acupuncturists to all the way up the chain to one day I was in a brain surgeon's office, and they're like, we don't know what's wrong with you or why you're having all this pain. And it was at this time when I was just reading books and trying to be like, what else can I do with my life? I don't really know. I got DISC certified, I got Colby certified, and I was just trying to figure out like what to do next while I was in pain, while I was miserable. I started to have severe anxiety, severe depression, became suicidal because I couldn't be active. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have hope for my future. My work wasn't fulfilling. I was shutting myself off from social connections because I was so sad. I didn't want to be around people. So it was an absolutely devastating time period for me. And so what happened is I kept trying to figure out like how to get unstuck, and couldn't find anybody who could really help me with that. And one day I was sitting with a therapist, and she was like, you're actually miserable because of how you see the world, of your mental lens, of all of the old programs and beliefs and things that you've been carrying with you that no longer serve you. You believe your entire self-worth and identity is based upon how much money you make. You believe your self-worth and identity is based on how hard you work. You have beliefs that if you stop working hard, that means you're lazy and that you're worthless. And all these old things that you picked up from when you were younger are crushing you and keeping you stuck and actually making you way worse. And I said, that's fascinating. I understand that here. How do I change those things? Like really, really change what I believe, because those have been locked in my entire life. And she gave me some answer like, well, you're going to have to increase your visits from one time a week to 3 times a week. And we're going to explore that over the upcoming years. And we're going to look into that. And I was like, No, 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 no. I don't have that long. I'm not hanging around in this life for that long. I can't do that. I need something fast. And that was when I kind of set off on like exploring like why are people the way they are and how can you change things.
Mm-hmm.
And through over the next year and a half of trial and error and being my own science experiment, I essentially stumbled across what I feel like is kind of the beginning of a magic formula that allows for rapid root cause problem removal, and shifting what we feel, shifting what we believe, shifting old programs and parts of our subconscious that no longer serve us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did this work on myself, and then my friends started to notice how rapidly I was changing. So I started to work on friends, and then I started to work on kind of test clients, and then clients from my agency were like, "Oh, can you help me with that too?" And then before I knew it, I had a line out the door, because it was so consistent, so methodical. It worked so every single time, and it was so fast that word spread really, really, really quickly. And before I knew it, I was sitting there one day going, I had been searching for what was next in my life for years,
Right.
and I couldn't plan it out. I couldn't put it on a piece of paper and organize it and plan it and like be, this is what's next. It kind of just fell into my lap, and I wouldn't have wished those 3 years on anybody. And yet here on the other side, I literally have my next business that not only am I passionate about, but it's the most deeply fulfilling thing I could ever imagine, because people come to me every day and they're like, you changed my life. I'm happy for the first time, or I'm unstuck, or now I can make more money and take care of my family. And I get love notes like that every day. And it's wildly more fulfilling than any year I ever had at the agency.
So do you mean that changing somebody's life is a lot more than creating them a website?
Imagine that.
So,
Imagine that.
imagine that.
Again, shocking.
Shocking. So now, when you're looking back through that time, and again, you said like you were here, you were 8 years old and going to a therapist. So I mean, this wasn't a new experience for you. And so from one therapist just saying to you, hey, you're looking, your lens is cloudy, right? And was that something that you never heard before? Was that something new to you that just like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
oh,
I definitely had, nobody had ever told me that the way I was looking at life, was a little wonky. That was the first time someone had put it in those words to me. It was always through therapy and coaching in the past. It had always been like, well, you have these problems. Here are a bunch of tools to dump on it. Here's a bunch of ways to cope with the challenges. Here's ways to try and be less depressed when you get sad. Like, we're just going to throw tools and tactics at it. And then this woman came along, and I was sitting in her, her place or her office in Denver. And I remember the day I was sitting on her couch, and it was like velvety, and there was sun coming through the windows, and there were like rainbows everywhere that hitting like the leaded glass. It was a late afternoon in the fall, and like all the trees were orange outside. And she said, it's not your life. And I was like, no, it's my life. Everything's wrong with my life. And she's like, it's really not. The way that you're looking at it is the problem. And I just remember, it was like, that was the day that kind of changed everything. And that was the day I asked the question, how can I change how I look at life? How can I change what I'm experiencing and seeing? Like, how can I change these lenses? Because if they really are dark and black, can I swap out the lenses? Is that possible? And she was the one that got me to realize that, hey, it's possible. She didn't have the answer.
mm-hmm.
And, I studied the work of a number of people like Lion Goodman and Morty Lefko and all these people who before me had, done all sorts of work into shifting what people believe. And through those studies, that's what led me to be able to do what I'm doing today.
So did you, when you started to read and discover a new way of looking at this, was there a moment in time that you all of a sudden had the aha moment where things kind of snapped into place, or you had a dream or something that just sort of really sparked that new way of thinking that got you to create a whole new way to help people?
It really was that day on the couch, like when I was sitting there with the sun coming in and the rainbows all over the room, when she said that your mental lens is dirty, and you need to figure out how to clean your lens. That was the moment. That's the moment that when I go back through my memories, that was the moment where it was like a lightning bolt hit me. That, whoa, I've been approaching this all wrong. I've been looking for pills and doctors and tools to soothe my problems. Like, what if I made it so the problems weren't there and I didn't have to cope with them? That day truly was the day that everything shifted.
Huh. It's interesting. Yeah, you were looking at things externally to help you internally, and really it was all internal. It was just you shifting your thinking. So bring me up to speed now, because you have the Mind Fix group. So what's all the work that you're doing presently?
Sure. So at the Mind Fix group, we help leaders and entrepreneurs rapidly and permanently identify and then eliminate the biggest mental barriers and roadblocks that are keeping them from being able to achieve the success they want and the happiness that they desire, so that they can have these lives of kind of infinite impact and happiness and fulfillment. So people essentially come to us when they're stuck, or when they feel like they're getting in their own way. Because there's all sorts of people who are in business, and all they need is a business coach, or they need a new marketing team or strategy, or they just need someone to help them get their finances organized, and then they can take off. And, there's something strategic or tactical that they need. And there's tons of great coaches out there that help with that. However, at some point along the entrepreneurial journey, people often end up finding themselves stuck, where they know what they need to do. They know what they're supposed to do, or they know what they're supposed to stop doing. They have a mentor or a coach, or they've read their books, they've gone to the webinars and the conferences, and they know they're supposed to be on, recording videos, or they're supposed to be making outbound sales calls, or they know they're supposed to be hiring a team and delegating instead of whatever it is.
Right.
They know, and yet they don't do it. And they don't know why. So people show up and come to us, and they're dealing with self-sabotage or counterproductive thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And the symptoms often look like things like perfectionism, procrastination or avoidance, difficulty setting boundaries, inability to say no, self-doubt, harsh self-criticism, imposter syndrome, all of these things where another book, another course, another coach don't fix it. And it's like, I don't know why. It feels like there's an invisible tug of war. It feels like I'm pushing against like an invisible brick wall, and I don't know what's going on or why I'm doing this. And God, it feels like I'm broken. And so we are like their magic wands. They come to us and they give us their list of this is the stuff that if you could make this go away and I could be different, I could make so much more money and I'd be so much happier and I'd be sane again. And my wife would probably, my wife or husband would probably like me a lot more. So they come to us with those symptoms or problems. And what we do is usually over the course of about 3 months, we go in, we identify what's causing the problems at the root level. And then like a surgeon, we extract it, we pull it out so that it's no longer there. And there's nothing left to cope with. There's no, you need to meditate so that you don't procrastinate. There's no change your software so that you get things done. Like the problem and why people are unstuck gets pulled out, and people go on their way almost as if they had new software installed. There's no hard work. There's no repetition. Like when you really change things at the root level, it's almost like people are streams, and we pull out the boulders in the middle of the streams so that people can just flow and have the momentum. They don't need a better kayak. They just need the things that are slowing the flow down to be pulled out of the way. And that's what we specialize in.
Wow, that is fascinating. So when you're, when you worked with somebody and then when they look back, do they recognize it? Do they see what it was? Did they know?
So often, one of the funniest things is we'll do a review when somebody graduates. And, even though it's only 2.5, 3 months, people will go, I don't even remember having that problem. I don't even remember being that way or feeling that way or thinking those thoughts. That it's so far removed, and it's it's so different. They're like, I don't remember it. So sometimes there's almost like this bizarre lack of remembering that occurs, which is why it's really important for people to track their progress, because it's really easy to shift and have complete transformation and get exactly what you want, and it feels like no big deal, because it's when you pull a boulder out, it just gets easier. It's not like you have to learn how to paddle harder, which you'll remember, which is what a lot of tools and therapies are, is like learn how to adjust and paddle harder and train and repeat. But when you just pull a boulder, everything's just easy, and you don't notice that a boulder's gone. You just things are good.
And and it all sits in the subconscious mind.
Well, it's kind of in that liminal space. Like some of it's conscious, some of it's beyond, outside of our awareness. Some of it kind of goes back and forth between awareness and not awareness, in that space in between. But a lot of our work is taking what's outside of someone's awareness and bringing it up into awareness so that we can then clear it out.
Right. And I just find that, in psychology, I find that just so fascinating, of the things that we do, right, that we don't realize we're doing. Right. We become unconscious to what we're doing and the actions that we're taking. Yeah. And so we have people like you in the world who help people actually shine a light on it and pull the boulders out. So that's amazing. That is an amazing story.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's shift this a little bit. I believe that we're all odd ducks. I believe that we're all misfits. So tell me about a time, and you've kind of led into this already, but tell me about a time like when you didn't fit in, and when you were different, and it could be a positive or negative, right? But what have you done differently to stand out? What's made you in that regard?
I never really fit in, especially when I was younger. I mean, I was the kid that was getting her backpack thrown into the garbage cans, and getting teased because my hair was short and I looked like a boy. I was one of those kids that had a rough time, definitely, in school up until about high school, when I think my uniqueness and differences, especially in a place like San Francisco, it's like, oh, you're different. That's actually a cool thing, and it started to be embraced. But most of my childhood, I mean, when I had to do a lot of therapy, and I have memories of things like, my mom would want me to be socially, have social groups and not be isolated. So she signed me up for brownies, right? Which is the level before you get to, it's the earlier thing before Girl Scouts.
Right.
As I was in kindergarten, so I must have been like 5 or 6. And like the memories I have of that are all the brownies in a girl's bedroom, 12 of them, and then a locked door, and then me sitting like outside, like, kind of like leaned over and crying, like being like pushed out and then lock the door. And then I would be sitting there by myself. Like it was not just a mental or emotional, you don't fit in, but like a physical, you don't belong here, right? Like you're not one of us. And so a lot of my childhood was that. And that would be a not fitting in example. I would say.
So, but out of that, if you look back upon that, right, it's obviously, it's part of who you are today, because it's part of your past, right? But do you think that part of those scenarios, although they are from a negative standpoint, right, has really helped nurture you to the person that you are today?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. All of our experiences contribute to who we are today. And I'm able to have deep empathy and compassion for a lot of our clients who have similar issues. And I've found myself kind of being the type of person who, whenever I see someone being an odd duck, I do everything I can to kind of embrace them and pull them in, whether it's I'm out on the ski slopes and I see, a young girl by herself, not able to get up, and I'll go over and help. Or if I'm at an event or a party or a conference and I see someone kind of being by themselves and looking like they may be feeling awkward, I'll go over, and I'm attracted to those people because I have such deep empathy and compassion. I'm able to, I feel like, reciprocate and give back and have a way of helping people feel like they belong.
And can you see that now as a gift?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. So isn't it interesting at the time when you were a kid and you're left out, and I mean, obviously it doesn't feel very good, but learning from those experiences, right? Then you have built this compassion and empathy for others, and which is actually probably, part and parcel led you the work that you're doing now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it is actually, it's a gift. So it's a positive. Can you tell me about a time in your life, Erin, where someone did something for you that left an impact, that left a mark?
Mm. So, yes, I can. Yes, I have a really great example. That's a hard question because I have so many examples that have one that just jumped to the forefront. So when I was a teenager, when I was in undergraduate, I was going to college and I was in my mid teens, like mid to late teens. I ended up having, and this is the first time I've ever publicly shared this anywhere, but I ended up having an issue with stealing. So I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a job. I had a little bit of money from my parents every month that helped me get by. And I remember there was a Christmas where I wanted to give gifts to my friends, and I didn't have any money to give any gifts. And I went to the local REI in the US, and which is a massive sporting goods store.
Okay.
And just massive. Like they have a rock climbing wall inside, and it has every sport and every piece of equipment you could possibly imagine. Huge. Um, and I remember I stole like 2 hats for friends, you know, and I put them in my backpack. Like I went into the changing room and I took these 2 hats and I put them in my backpack that I would carry around from school, and I walked out. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I even bought something at the counter because I had enough money to buy it. And then I walked out with these 2 hats that I was going to give as gifts. And I went to the parking lot and I was about 20 yards from my car and I hear a ma'am, would you please turn around? And I just
Oh
like, even to
no.
this day, like I have like the goosebumps. So the response of the like, oh my God, right? And
Yeah.
I turn around and there were 2 security guards and they're like, would you please come with us? And I just was like absolutely shaking. And I got taken to the basement of this massive, huge building. It was like their flagship store. So it's like the biggest in the country. And I got taken to the basement and they took me down these like cold, dark hallways. Like it was just like in a movie, you know, like you'd imagine like the underground of a prison would be. You know, it's
Right.
like dripping in concrete and there's like single light bulbs swinging back and forth and cobwebs. And it was chilly and cold and damp. And they led me to this dark room that was just all cement, like on all 4 sides, like at least that's how I remember it. And they put me in this little broken folding chair and they're sitting there filling out paperwork and asking me questions and, you know, can we see your ID? And I just remember bawling, absolutely bawling and rocking back and forth, going like, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible person, and having a complete breakdown. Like I'm going to be in so much trouble. Oh my God, I had visions of going to jail and, you know, the rest of my life being ruined. And at one point, I think one of the security guards looked over at me and felt bad. And I was probably having like the worst reaction. You know, I think they're used to like combative and,
Yeah.
you know, like kids. And here they're looking at this like girl, like having a complete mental breakdown, talking to herself, repeating like, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. Oh my God, I'm done, and breaking down. And he went over and he sat down next to me and put his hand on my shoulder and he said, you know, just because you did something bad doesn't mean you're a bad person. Sometimes really good people do bad things. And that like completely changed everything for me because I had never made that distinction. So even though I grew up in a normal household, there was a lot of punishment. I got grounded. I got things taken away from me for a month at a time. And it was like, if you did something wrong, you were bad. If you
Right.
did something wrong, there was instant, massive punishment. If you did something wrong, you didn't get a second chance. And that was the environment that I grew up in. And so here I was, and I messed up. And just the consequences were terrifying. And I was equating myself, and I was just sitting there going, I'm a bad person because I never made the distinction that it was possible that I could be a good person who did bad things. And here's the security guard, probably not being paid much money, probably not having the most fun job. And he sat down and put his hand on me. And to this day, like I remember that, and I remember that distinction, and it allowed me this space that to mess up, to not have to be perfect, to know that just because I'm not always perfect and good all the time, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily instantly a bad person. So that was a pivotal moment in my life.
What was the outcome? What played out in the, I need to hear the end of the story. You got me hanging on an edge here.
I think what ended up happening is they promised like they wouldn't send a notification to my parents, or they'd send it to me, but they accidentally sent it to my parents' house in California. And of course my mom opened it. So when I went home for Christmas break, there's a letter on the table and a chair pulled back from the dining room table where there was a discussion that was going to be had that I hadn't mentioned what had happened. So I think I got a fine or something like that, and was asked not to come back to the store for a year, something along those lines. But they were very lenient, and like, just don't do this again, kid. Like, come on, you're better than this. Like, you don't need to go down a life of crime for Christmas gifts. Like, maybe finish school and go make some money instead. So they were really kind. I did get in trouble with my parents, and there was a fine, and I couldn't go back for a year. And other than that, it's a memory and a story I get to tell.
Absolutely. But what a lesson learned, right? I mean, and this, the security guard too, maybe never thought twice, right? It said, hey, you know what, right? But the impact that it had on you was huge, right? And he's probably just doing his job.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, and maybe, just maybe, right, it was the best thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Lesson learned, right? Shifted your thinking, and it became a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing that story. This is only the first time ever that was shared publicly. I feel honored.
Yeah.
So what are you doing right now presently to better the pond? And more importantly, I like the question of why are you doing it?
Yeah, it's simple. I mean, what I'm doing is I am doing Mind Fix. We are changing people's lives. We are taking people who are stuck, who feel broken, who feel like they're never going to change after 40 years of trying to change, who are dealing with frustrations with their business, with their family, with their life, and we are rapidly and permanently transforming their lives. And since we do a lot of this work with leaders and entrepreneurs, the ripple effect in the pond is massive. When a leader or an entrepreneur gets past their roadblocks and gets out of their own way, they're able to impact tens, hundreds, hundreds of thousands of people around them. So that's what I'm doing to better the pond. I'm also working on kind of the legacy piece, because right now, primarily we work one-on-one in high-end programs with people, and I'm working to be able to step back and create programs and opportunities for people on a mass scale. So the question was, the first question was, what are you doing? And then what was the second one?
Why are you doing it?
Oh, because it's wildly fulfilling. It fills my heart to be able to, as someone who has experienced a tremendous amount of mental anguish and suffering, and all I would have wished, like every day I wish, like I would just wish someone could help me. I would give anything for someone to help me. Someone who has gone through periods of suicidality in life and just been like, I can't live anymore. Like the amount of suffering, if someone could have just come along and be like, hey, you can change, like to be able to give that to other people and to reduce suffering in the world, and to be able to explain, hey, there's hope. It's just, I can't think of anything else I would rather do with my time on the planet. That's
amazing. And I feel you. I feel you when you say that. It's absolutely so authentic. And I think that, and thank you for that, because I think there is a lot of people, especially, and COVID is throwing a wrench in everything. We all understand that. And and mental health has always been an issue, but I'm really seeing a lot of people now, especially with the uncertainty and everything that's going on, and mental health is a big issue. And I think there's a lot of people out there that don't feel that there's help for them, and they feel that they're alone, and they do, and which you did yourself, right? You isolate, right? So to let people know that there is solutions, and there is people out there willing to help, right? It's just a matter of going out there and getting it.
Yeah.
Do you, in your world, which you said earlier, but do you mainly deal with leaders and entrepreneurs? Is that sort of who you typically deal with? Do you
It's
take?
our primary audience. I would say we've worked with housewives, we've worked with teenagers, we've worked with corporate executives. So we have worked with a variety of people. We just typically work with entrepreneurs and leaders because we've found that we can do such rapid work with them because we're not dealing with anybody who has like a victim mentality.
Okay.
Typically entrepreneurs and leaders, that's actually what's most important to us. Entrepreneurs and leaders are typically like, hey, I own that my experience is because of me. When I used to work with anybody, we would have a lot of people who would show up and it'd be like, well, my life, again, how I used to be, my life sucks because my husband is a jerk and my kids are always crying and my boss doesn't appreciate me, and everything that's wrong is around them and they're not looking at themselves. So we need people who look at, are able to own that their life experience is because of what's going on with them. And that's like 95% of entrepreneurs and leaders, which is why we specialize in working with them.
Yeah, you have to want to be, you have to want the help, right? I mean, and until you take 100% responsibility for yourself, you're throwing away all your control, right?
Totally.
And once you take that 100% responsibility, then you can actually take action.
Totally.
And then they come talk to people like you.
Totally.
So looking back and looking forward, right, and from the lessons learned in your life, right, can you take that and paint me a picture of your golden pond? You are the wise sage, you have the crystal ball, and you're looking forward into the world. Where do you, from what you've learned in life, what do you paint a picture of our future? And it can be something personal and something global.
My vision is a world in which people don't think they're broken and that they understand that there are just things in their way that are keeping them from being the best possible version of themselves, that they don't need more, that they don't need to change, that most oftentimes, it's just a matter of removing blocks and noise and old, pieces of programming. And it's all about subtraction. Like we have what we need within us. That's my vision of a golden pond, is where people have a different understanding and see themselves differently.
So and sort of trying to sort of simplify that is like, do you see it as most of the majority of people just get in their own way?
Yeah, we have things that keep us and keep us stuck and have us being in our own way. And it's a lot of times just stuff that we're carrying around we don't need to carry around anymore.
I love your vision of the golden pond.
Thank you.
That was a great vision of the golden pond. So I thank you ever so much for your time. I know you got a very busy life, and taking the time off my podcast, I truly, truly appreciate it. And your stories and sharing that original story. So if we want to find you, Erin, where do my listeners go to find you?
Easiest place to go is mindfixgroup.com. Take a look at the results page there. It's like 10 miles long. Like, just keep scrolling and see what's possible. We also have a free video training, on the site that's 1 hour long that anybody can watch. And then we also have a handful of case studies so people can read about like real life people and what they've actually experienced with this work.
So mindfixgroup.com is the best place to go. Do you anything on a social media side or
Facebook? I'm the only Erin Pheil on Facebook, I think, still, probably. And that's where I spend most of my time versus any of the other social media platforms.
And how do you spell your last name?
Pheil.
Pheil. So Erin Pheil on LinkedIn, and mindfixgroup.com is where we can find you. And I really hope that people do. I really hope that people reach out to you. And I think it's something that I think you're doing very, very important work. And I agree with when you said earlier about the ripple effect. When you have a leader or an entrepreneur, right, and they start to get out of their own way and they start to learn new ways about themselves, they take that out and then throw it out, into their world. Now, whether that be the people that work for them, whether that be their family members or whoever else is around them, right? The ripple effect just keeps going out. So
Yes.
it's amazing the work that you can talk to one person, make that change in 3 months, and you can change the lives of so many other people because of it.
Totally.
Wow. You amaze me.
Thank you.
I'm so impressed. So there you have it, folks. It was a great time here again. So this is Warren Berry flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you ever so much, Erin.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.